you exist as being goth, black, and a woman, that people are going to perceive you as a buy one, get two deal. So before we get into all of the usual problematic comments like goth mommy and those cringy ass posts that are like, goth girl wants to come more than she wants to die, nonsense, let's talk about how this topic specifically relates to me because I'm black before I am goth. And black people's bodies have been over sexualized for literally centuries, like hundreds of years. It's been going on. I touch on a few different things, and it may sound random, but at the end of the video, you'll see how it all connects. Lynchings. Okay, lynchings have a very dark history. It's a very dark thing to do. But lynchings weren't just horrific because of the graphic unaliving of many countless people throughout time, but they couldn't even have peace in death because they were picked apart like scavengers, and their body parts, including their sexual organs, were kept as trophies. And a lot of those trophies are sitting in people's homes today as a part of history. They're mummified, they're buried, they're dried out. Like, people used to trade them. People used to go to lynchings and make it a family affair and be smiling, take pictures, make them into postcards, and be trading them across the country left and right. Like, that is the type of subjugation and such that we were subjected to in this society. There is a book called The Delectable Negro. Like, we don't have as many mummies as we could have because of white people in the Victorian stage specifically ate a lot of them. And we don't know how many mummies there were when they started finding mummies in the first place because of this. Sarah Bartman was kidnapped from her home in Africa and brought over to Europe for people to all go and look at and pass around and traffic to see her body. And when she died, her body parts have still not been returned back to her tribe, and it's still being preserved in France to this day. And then after Sarah Bartman was paraded around for her curvy body and oogled at and all the things, and people made all these assumptions about her and black women and everything based on the body type, this dress right here became popular right afterwards. Like, it is diabolical. A lot of our cultural dances, like twerking, belly dancing, which comes from like the Middle East, like Egypt and like all these different places, winding, are seen as demonic, vulgar, over sexualized, and all these different things, when in actuality they have a lot of history, spirituality, traditions, culture, health, and well-being behind it. Like, well, we are just now figuring out in the scientific world that stress is stored in the hips, and a lot of the dances from our culture involve us moving the hips because of stories like Sarah Bartman and our bodies being naturally curvy and everything. Like, everything we do is just considered dark. Like, they didn't even bother trying to understand why our ancestors were doing the things that they were doing and how it was relevant to their culture and everything. They just looked at it and decided that it was gross. And now white girls are selling you guys twerking classes, winding classes. They're teaching patois and, you know, all the things that they once demonized, but now they can profit from. The fact that yoga is considered a middle-aged white girl thing, when yoga is a spiritual practice that's not just stretching, and they remove it from its Sanskrit origins and the stories and stuff behind it, it's just such a crime. Like, words cannot begin to describe how much of a crime that is. The idea that black people have a higher pain tolerance than white people, that our skin is thicker than theirs, and that we're drug seeking and all of these things are still taught in medical schools to this day. And that leads to medical disparities in the medical field. Like, if you're gonna go get your blood drawn, there might be rougher with you because they believe that black skin is tougher than white skin. If you go and get a major surgery, they may not give you pain meds. They might just tell you to take Tylenol, versus someone else that has the exact same procedure. Like, it is so deep. The dehumanization is just so many different levels to this. The history of gynecology and how black women were experimented on without permission, without consent, without awareness about what was going on, and experimented on, and then had their bodies displayed amongst other strangers and everything. And we're still using the information from these studies to this day, and not much has really changed from that information. A lot of institutions aren't even allowed to have words like black or female in their studies to try and correct these things. Like, it's just crime on top of crime on top of crime on top of crime. Mr. Rosetta Tharpe is coined as being the inventor of rock and roll. And the rock and roll genre has expanded to a giant umbrella that includes rock, goth, metal, punk, and all of these different things, yet it's still associated with being white, even though it would not exist without black people. Like, constantly being gaslit, and our history is constantly being erased and whitewashed and ignored. And then people try and act like you're the asshole for just acknowledging it. It's, oh, you want to make everything all about race. Not everything's all about race. It's like, you just called me an Oreo, as in a person that is black on the outside and white on the inside because I like rock music. But when I tell you that rock music would not exist without black women, you, oh, everything's not about race. You guys are too sensitive. Like, no, this literally is about race. Get in, loser. We're going to talk about how it is particularly diabolical for black women to be sexualized and fetishized, specifically in the alternative community, considering our history of already being fetishized in our black bodies, and you add being alternative to the mix. People still sexualize and romanticize Sally Hemings to this day, even though she was literally a child and a victim of SA and many forms of violence that many enslaved people face to this day. You want to talk about the sexualization of black people in this country and in our society as a whole? Google why Jackson is a common last name for a lot of black Americans, because it gets sick. You know, not all enslaved people were on these forced labor camps just for the labor, as if that is a just for me. It's not. It's absolutely not, and it's unacceptable. But you know, we're gonna move past it. It wasn't just labor camps, as in like the physical demand of producing labor. There were breeding camps. Have you Googled the history of the word MFer? Because Our ancestors were often essayed in ways that you can't imagine, and oftentimes they were forced into incest with each other. Like the sexualization of black bodies, it goes deep. So you may be wondering, how does all of this relate to me being goth and presenting as an alternative person? I will be getting into that shortly. I know that a lot of you guys like to ignore this fact, but goth music would not be possible without black people. Not just because there were black people in the original 80s bands, but literally most of our modern, like, English speaking music in the Western world can be traced back to the blues, which was started by black people. Our cultural dances were demonized. They were called vulgar, they were called trashy, they were called ghetto, and they were over sexualized. And what we now call twerking goes back hundreds, potentially thousands of years. And there's so many tribes across the diaspora that have incorporated this into their culture, into their spirituality, into various forms of celebration, storytelling, history being passed down, and just so many significant things within our culture. And it has been reduced to something that is seen as gross and or sexual, and just seen as something that is not appropriate or not fitting for being a part of white society. Like, it really is that deep. Racism is dehumanizing, and when you combine dehumanization based on race and dehumanization based on gender and combine them targeted towards black women, that's called misogynoir. According to northwestern.edu, the term misogynoir was coined by Moya Bailey in 2010 in a crunk feminist newsletter in reference to the specific type of misogyny that black women face that is a combination of both racism and sexism. Misogynoir is the hatred of or the aversion to or prejudice against black women. Misogynoir is rampant in many ways that we haven't even fully realized yet. If you are a black woman, then you are on the receiving end of a specific type of misogyny. Because it's not just the hatred of women, it's the hatred of black people and women and black women. And then you combine all of those together, you get misogynoir. Trans and non-binary people have been trying to tell y'all how the binaries against gender and sex and trying to push everybody into a box is literally causing harm to us all in so many different ways, black women in particular, because the rules of femininity are geared towards what white men want for white women within their white societies. They were never meant to include other people like me and what our cultures deem as being appropriate for different genders and such. So when femme presenting people are considered less than on the spectrum of femininity and perceived as being less feminine, hair, different, when you have tattoos, different color hair, piercings, any other type of body modifications, which, first of all, the hate towards alternative people is rooted in racism. The hatred towards alternative people is rooted in sexism. The hatred towards alternative people is rooted in white supremacy. So it really is that serious and it really is that deep. Women and femme presenting people with different color hair, tattoos, and body modifications are seen as free spirits, which to the wrong crowd can be interpreted as being sexually liberated, which in turn means that we like pain, we like violence, therefore we're asking for it. Like, you see how that is a slippery slope? Some people still associate alternative people who have different color hair, tattoos, piercings, and such as either being on drugs, being involved in gangs, or a part of the sex industry, like the kind that involves the 16th letter of the alphabet and being on the blade. Not, the kind that is of consent and whatnot. And there's a lot of stigma that comes with that, and it affects how you're treated in life. We know as a society and have come to accept that if you are alternative presenting, then you're less likely to get a job in whatever career or field you're into. So you really gotta be selective about what you get and when you get it and how you get it before you do that, and make sure that you are financially secure and that you are secure in your career path to do so. People get discriminated against for housing, schools. If you're a Christian or religious of some sort, you could also be discriminated against within your church or religious community. Depending on where you live at, you can find it hard to make friends and just be ostracized, and just so many different things. And that causes so much harm. Like, I don't have time to fully break that down, but that is a deep level. Like, there's levels to this. The guidelines of femininity are about white supremacy. It's not just about telling us that we gotta straighten our hair to be more professional in the workplace. It's these rules of professionalism that are really white supremacy that tell us things like our nails have to be nude. But what's nude on us and what's nude on them is two different things. Like a beige, a gray, a ashy, dusty pink is not nude on me. We're told that we have to wear little to no neutral, natural looking, clean girl makeup in order to be considered professional. When there's so many different cultures, so many different indigenous societies that utilize so many different colors and so many different styles of makeup and tattoos and body modifications. First of all, body modifications as a whole comes from various African and indigenous cultures from around the world that have various spiritual, religious, and historical context that we will never be able to fully understand because we're not a part of their culture, which is a different conversation for a different day. Because if you're an alternative person, you don't fit into the rules of femininity, which puts you at a higher risk of violence, and you add on being black, which is already seen as less than already, and then you combine those two and you just get a can of worms that you just don't want. Think what you want to think, but this leads to real life harm, abuse, and discrimination in so many different ways, and it continues to affect our lives in more ways than I can begin to describe. There are no laws against subculture-based hate, discrimination, or violence in any way, and the The case that really is disturbing to me and is striking, and is one that many goth people are familiar with, is the case of Sophie Lancaster. Sophie Lancaster was brutally beaten to death many years ago because people didn't like her because she was goth. And her mom started the Sophie Lancaster Foundation to raise awareness about subculture based violence and to try and make it a hate crime in her country, and also to raise awareness about the issue around the world. And many goths have talked about Sophie Lancaster's case and how horrible it is, but unfortunately, we don't have many protections against people who are discriminated against based on things they can't change, let alone something like being involved in a subculture that you probably can't change but you can mask. Like, for an example, if I wanted to go into a space, oh my gosh, hold on. If I wanted to get a job and I wanted to do everything possible to increase the odds of me getting that job and making sure that I eliminate any biases that anybody can possibly have against me in order for me to get the job, I can decide not to dress the way I do on camera right here. I can decide not to dress the way that you guys see me on social media like TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. I can decide not to dress in the same way that I would to a goth or industrial club or a concert, and dress in a way that is more socially acceptable in the professional sense. Like, I can make that decision in order to increase my odds of getting hired. But I can't take off my black skin and put on a white one in order to increase the chances of me getting hired. Okay? Like, I cannot do that and then go home and put my black skin back on. So, and we are losing rights in this country. Like, Roe v. Wade got overturned. They're threatening to roll back marriage equality that allows us to have same-sex marriage. And we weren't even able to get marriage equality for disabled people to get married without losing their benefits. And all these other rights are being repealed back left and right. So we can't even properly have human rights for people who have things about them that they can't change in order to be socially accepted more in our society, let alone try to advocate for the rights of people within a subculture. And that's not to try and minimalize the violence, discrimination, and hate that someone can receive, especially in the cases like Sophie Lancaster. But, you know, for me, it's like the Crown Act isn't even like a widely enforced law. And the fact that they had to make it a law to where jobs aren't allowed to discriminate against Black people for our natural hair, and we still experience the discrimination, even though there had to be a law put in place in certain states to prevent it, and we weren't even able to make it national. So I can still get discriminated against for a job because of the way that my natural hair comes out of my freaking head. And I can also be discriminated against for my natural protective styles, especially because a lot of the white alternative people and like the rave girls have made box braids, French braids, faux locks, and things into like rave hair, concert hair, Like, so it's associated with having fun and being reckless and doing drugs and alcohol on the weekends and such over professionalism, on top of our hair already being seen as unprofessional. So, like, when people fetishize me for being goth and being black at the same time, because you can't separate the two because of who I am as a person, it is like a very specific level of diabolical. And then when it comes to like how goth people are fetishized, is like when there is porn online where they have goth girls telling the men that they like to be victimized, and people associate that type of attitude with the way that you dress, they think that it's okay to victimize you. They think that by default of me existing and going out into the world, I'm sending you a signal that says I like to be victimized. It's okay to victimize me. I am an object. I am public property. Do what you want. And for so long in this country, black women were not considered humans. We were considered property. So when you add the history of a person that was not considered human and considered property with the over sexualization of a subculture where that is the attitude, and you put those two together, like, it is a very specific brand of misogyny to experience. So when y'all get cussed out, when you try to rage bait me in real life and you come to me with these stupid things and you're like, goth mommy, step on me, I like chocolate. It doesn't even make any sense. It's not just stupid and annoying. There are levels to this. What entirely the fuck are we doing? And don't even get me started on how when journalists were studying punk and trying to learn what the punk movement was and what it was all about, instead of focusing on how punk was a protest, how punk was in direct opposition to white supremacy and conformity, consumerism, and everything else, you guys wrote all these scandalous articles about people's sex life, people's sexuality, and people being involved in, threesomes and kink and all of that, and associated it with punk, which eventually kind of evolved into the post-punk movement, which became the goth subculture, and how that initial reaction to it is still affecting us to this day, causing goth and alternative people as a whole to be over-sexualized, over-fetishized, objectified, and dehumanized. And then you add on different intersections like race, religion, weight, sexuality, kink, cosplay, and all of these things. You just get so many levels and layers of BS that really just doesn't have to be a thing. Next time you think it's a good idea to fetishize people as a whole, people who aren't consenting to be a part of your fetish, okay? Because there are people in the fetish community, there are people in the kink community, there are people in specific communities who are consenting to be viewed in a certain type of way when they are in that space. But I'm not in that space, okay? I'm not in it. And there's no hate, there's no disrespect or anything like that, but I'm not in there. And it's like, I remember I used to wear a spike choker all the time. I had this spike choker since I was a teenager because it was only $5 at Claire's. And this was back when Hot Topic used to sell chokers. And the ones at Hot Topic, they were sturdier and bigger, but they were like $20 and I was a kid. So I bought the spike choker at Claire's. I don't know why Claire's had a fucking spike choker. Don't ask me. But they had a spike choker and it had like a little ring in the middle. Like I bought like an initial one that kind of fell apart, and then I bought another one that was kind of better. And it had like a little ring in the middle, like a little D ring, and I put like a chain on there that I got from like a broken purse or whatever, just because I thought it was cute and it was fun to wear. I had no idea about kink and fetish and all these other things going on. And I would have people come up to me and like try and grab the chain on my choker and walk me like a fucking dog. And I would be like 15, 16 years old, and it would be a grown ass fucking man, a grown ass fucking woman. And I'd be like, dude, what the fuck are you doing? Like, no, what? Like, oh, well, you know, you're wearing a dog collar. I thought you wanted to be pulled.
Hey, who said that? Who in this land?
No, I don't want to be pulled. Click, boom. Like, what the actual fuck? I remember a time where, I don't know, I remember I was wearing like either fishnets or some type of lace tights or whatever, just because I thought they were cute and fun to wear. And I was in high school, and someone told me that I looked like a prostitute and that I should be on the corner or something. And I didn't find it funny.
Funny. Yes, but not funny, haha. Funny, weird.
Like, what are we doing? Okay, like what are we doing? And then as I got older and I started learning about human trafficking and how like most of the victims are between the ages of like 8 and 14, like there's nothing funny about saying some shit like that to a stranger on a good day, but especially not a kid, especially with, you know, how the way the world is. It's not just annoying, it's not just stupid, it's just like it's actually diabolical. Like I don't have any other word to describe other than it's just being diabolical, and you guys just need to stop doing it. And don't get surprised when you get cussed out for doing this and having this type of behavior, because the internet is not a real place. And if you bring that internet speak into real life, you are very likely to meet someone who is real violent and does not play about it. Like, I am not a porn category. I am not a buy one get one free deal, because a lot of you guys, when you want to see black women on the corn sites, you type in ebony, and when you want to see alternative women, you type in goth. You don't even know the differences in any of the subcultures, in any of those different styles of dress or anything. You don't even care about it because you just think that, well, we're just here to cater towards your fantasies and allow you to victimize us. And it's not true. And even when we tell you that, you just be like, shut up, go back to being my object. Why is my object talking to me? Could it be because I'm not your object? Like, I just don't understand. And I just want y'all to do better and not come to me with the BS, because I'm nice, but I'm not kind, and I will cuss you out. And depending on how you come to me and where we are, like, if we're in a grocery store, I might just start throwing shit and screaming. I'm not even kidding. Like, you gotta meet crazy with crazy, because that is a very dangerous thing. I can't do it. I feel like we have these conversations about how horrible it is to fetishize goth people, but I've never seen anybody mention the history of women being fetishized, dehumanized, objectified, and bring in the element of race. And I just feel like we need to have these conversations because we're losing recipes, we're losing the plot, we're forgetting or just blatantly ignoring history at this point. And it is repeating, it's being borrowed, and the bigots are taking notes on the most horrible times in modern history. And I just want us to just be for real and not be on the BS. Okay? That is what I want for us. I want us to move past this conversation and get to the point where we can talk about more fun things like the music, the subculture, the clothes, the fashion, the makeup, the hair, and so many other things. Alright, so this video has gone on long enough, and I feel like I'm rambling, and I sincerely hope you guys enjoyed it. Bye.